We're back for your ears only. I'm David Alpern.
And I'm Eddie Robinson with this quote from the news. Over-inclusive. That was the U.S. 11th Circuit Court of Appeals striking down the mandatory purchase of insurance in the new Obama-backed health care reform legislation. In sum, the individual mandate is breathtaking in its expansive scope, said the appellate opinion, while reversing the trial judge and ruling the rest of the new system could stand.
Now this.
This downgrade you've been reading about could have been entirely avoided if there had been a willingness to compromise in Congress.
Almost every action he took made it harder for entrepreneurs to build businesses, for banks to make loans, for businesses to hire and to build more capital.
I'd love to see the rest of tonight's debate asking us about what we would do to lead an America whose president has failed to lead, instead of playing Mickey Mouse games.
It's conventional wisdom that presidential elections, and especially re-elections, depend on the economy. And last week's roller coaster on Wall Street, in the shadow of the nation's first ever credit downgrade, continuing deficit and recovery problems, made it the major issue as presidential politics moved into higher gear. President Obama pointed a finger at congressional Republicans. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney pointed right back in a Fox News Channel candidate debate before the Iowa straw poll, as did former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, faulting Fox moderators for gotcha questions that diverted attention to his troubled campaign organization and Michelle Bachmann's past boast of wifely subservience.
Outside Iowa, and making the straw poll there less relevant by not competing, Texas Governor Rick Perry also brought a spotlight to economic issues as he launched his own presidential campaign in South Carolina. More charismatic than frontrunner by default Romney, Perry also may claim a better record on job creation and lower taxes, as well as strong evangelical and Tea Party support. With more on politics in the new deficit and downgrade era, for your ears only, we're joined again by TV commentator Eleanor Clift, also a Newsweek DailyBeast contributor. Welcome back to our program.
Glad to be with you.
We're recording before the straw poll, but how did you think the GOP candidates did in the TV debate beforehand with the Iowans there and the national audience? Did Romney keep his lead?
Well, it was a much livelier debate than the two previous ones, and Mitt Romney, just as he did in the two earlier debates, sailed above the controversy, and I think came across as the most accomplished and the most serious, the grown-up on the stage. And that's in part because the other candidates really didn't go after him. They were too busy squabbling among themselves for really to position themselves as the alternative to Mitt Romney, who is, you point out, as the front runner, although he's certainly not a very strong front runner.
Minnesota Congressman Bachmann and former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty targeted each other at least as much as Obama. Could the straw poll practically eliminate one or the other?
Well, they're the Minnesota twins. They share the same home state, and Tim Pawlenty has been working Iowa for really just about a year. And Michelle Bachmann is a newcomer, and she's really stolen all the buzz. And so I think some of the speculation is that if Bachmann does win the straw poll, that Pawlenty is going to have to, rethink his campaign, and he's going to have trouble raising money and all of that. But I must say, the straw poll attracts, maybe a maximum of 15,000 voters, and they're drawn there by free food and promises of air-conditioned tents and music, and it hardly seems the right arena to have the kind of impact on the race that some of the speculation is saying it will have.
What becomes the first real test for Rick Perry since he's avoided the straw poll? What will you look for to judge his viability?
Well, when the voting starts, we'll certainly know more about that next year. But I think, Rick Perry has benefited by being the absent man, and he hasn't really gotten the kind of scrutiny that will come now that he's announced an announced candidate. He does have a good jobs record, but Texas also has the highest number of healthcare uninsured in the nation, and their education system leaves a lot to be desired. And so he now will face the scrutiny that he hasn't gotten so far. And I think the expectation is, though, that he could crowd out the other social evangelicals in the field, and the field is very heavy with people who are focusing on Christian values. And because he held this prayer rally and is really more forcefully injecting the role of his beliefs into the campaign, and it may also thrust the religion of Mitt Romney, the front runner, more onto the front pages. He's a Mormon, and some Christian evangelicals have a problem with that.
On the Democratic side, you've written a lot about the frustration within President Obama's progressive base. How deep and on what key issues?
Progressives are really frustrated. They think he doesn't fight hard enough, that he gives away too much to Republicans. And in this last debt deal, they really feel that he just surrendered entirely by not having any revenues in the deal and basically giving the Republicans exactly what they wanted. So, and it's partly substantive, and it's also, I think, stylistic. They wish he would come out fighting more, even if he loses. They feel that he's too accepting of Republican dominance, and he's let the Republican right, chiefly the Tea Party, really set the agenda in Washington so that it's all about deficits when the country really seems to be saying they need jobs, and the president has really been, I think, thrown off of his own agenda and is, playing on the opponent's field, and I think that's very frustrating to progressives.
On the other hand, you say there's little chance of a primary challenge to the president, if only for the sake of Democratic unity in the campaign next year. But former independent candidate Ralph Nader has been looking for at least a symbolic Democratic challenger. What's his rationale and prospects?
Well, his rationale is that if the president doesn't face any challenges in the primaries, he's going to be, as Ralph Nader put it to me, then all he'll be doing is responding to the crazy Republicans. So what Nader would like is some people with progressive ideas on the economy, on the environment, on corporate power, to get them challenging the president and get him into debate so that at least the conversation is on Democratic turf, and they'll be talking about issues that the Democratic base cares about. Otherwise, I think Nader and as others are worried that the progressives and the coalition that elected this president in 2008 are going to be so disheartened. They're not going to oppose him, but they're not going to vote Republican, but they're just not going to come out in the numbers that are necessary if he's to win re-election.
TV commentator Eleanor Clift is also a Newsweek DailyBeast contributor.
Quote from the News, "We're issuing a call for industry action, but we are not leaving it to industry alone." That was former CIA Director John Deutsch on the recommendations of his panel on water contamination caused by the gas drilling technique called hydraulic fracking. Called for more transparency on the fluids injected into gas pockets and more study of the impact on nearby wells.
Next, Japan's first atomic cover-up, made in the USA, for your ears only.